Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Morning. Nice to see you all here today. I think I've only attended this event once in the 8 years, unfortunately, but it was in what I like to call my before life. So I was sitting here all day learning a lot of things, and it was really interesting. I wanted to start this morning a little bit setting the scene. It was maybe just over 3 years ago, in late March 2016, in Chicago, taking part in the Taste of Iceland festival, which is sort of a celebration to introduce all sorts of different things related to Iceland in a country. And I was there to talk about the Iceland Writers Retreat, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, an event that I co-founded a few years before that. And there was we were a bunch of Icelanders there, and so we would go out for dinner in the evenings. And on that dinner, in probably the last week of March 2016 or something, of course, what were we talking about, all of us Icelanders, was the upcoming presidential election. And I was saying, yeah, who's going to run? I don't know, who's put their name in? And we were all brainstorming, and oh yeah, I know that person, they're really interesting, and I know this. And that was, I guess it was maybe 10 days later or 2 weeks later when my husband's name started being thrown into the pot for that, and things completely changed for me within a 2-month period of time. And all of a sudden, which I had no idea about at the end of March like that, I found myself and our family found ourselves in this different situation, and what I would say a really extremely privileged situation. And one of the biggest privileges of that is that now I have the opportunity to be able to travel more and talk about all sorts of different things that I feel are important to talk about, important to shed a light on. And one of those things that I really like to talk about is what an innovative country I think we have here in Iceland. For those of you who don't speak Icelandic or who from traveling from abroad, there's this phrase in Iceland, glöggt gests to see things with a visitor's eye. And because I was born and raised in a different country, I feel sometimes that gives me a bit of a perspective to see things in a slightly different way. And I feel like it gives me a little bit of a right to brag a bit more because I chose to be living in Iceland and I chose to become an Icelander, and I wasn't here through some twist of fate. And I know that in Iceland, at least, there's something a bit about people don't like maybe to brag too much or to be too arrogant if they're speaking. But it's something that I think when we're abroad, we need to do a little bit more, is show is talk with a bit more self-confidence about our entrepreneurial journeys and about some of the startups and innovations and exciting things that are taking place here. Because as all of you know, there are a lot of exciting things taking place in this country and a lot of wonderful ideas. And one of the areas that I'm most proud of maybe is the broad area of creativity. I often say abroad that Iceland is an incredibly creative country, has an incredibly creative population, and that we have this respect for creativity in all sectors. Now that might apply a lot to the arts, but I think it really applies a lot to the startup and innovation community as well. Because as all of you founders and startup people know, you can't have a successful startup without a dash of creativity. So that's one of the things that I like to try and talk about and help to shed a light on in my role as First Lady. But one of the decisions that I made at the very beginning of this adventure was also that even though my husband got a new job at the beginning of August 2016, that didn't mean that I had to quit my job just because of something my husband did. And my job is as a founder. So I continue to do that also today and to work on the event that I founded. So one of the things that I wanted to do today was give you a slight overview of the event that I co-founded and share with you a little bit of my story and journey as the co-founder of the Iceland Writers Retreat and a couple of takeaways from that. There's 4 slides. You'll hear about that in a minute. And they're about as advanced as this one. This is myself and my co-founder, Erica Jacobs Green. Some of you know her. She's a wonderful woman. The Iceland Writers Retreat is held annually in April each year. It's now been held 6 times, and it's an event for anyone who loves the written word. And we are comprised of a series of small group writing workshops on the craft of writing. So we invite famous authors and good teachers to come and lead workshops on everything from creating plot to getting rid of your work to developing character or irony, etc., etc. Those workshops have a maximum of 15 people in each one, and participants take a whole lot of them. And we also introduce people to Iceland's rich literary heritage. So we have the Golden Circle tour that probably all of you know, but our tour is led by a writer. It was my husband for the first few years because he came cheap. As you founders know too, we have to drag in everyone we know to help us out with things. And we start State, the home of Iceland's Nobel Prize winner Halldór Laxness. We have a pub night with music and readings by local authors. We have an open reading for everyone. So we really try to give people the chance to get to know about Iceland's rich literary heritage as well. We have a lot of fun, of course. We've now been held for 6 times. Next year, we are expanding a little bit, and we're going to hold at the same time as the Iceland Writers Retreat a new event called the Iceland Readers Retreat, which is going to be for people who don't necessarily want to write, but are very avid readers, maybe people in book clubs, and we'll have a writer come over and do lectures about their work and their oeuvre and combine that with the cultural tours. There are 3 things that I see sort of as special about this event in the context of today's event. One, I would say this is cultural entrepreneurship, of course. Maybe this is my own thinking, but I tend to think of startup communities. They are often very tech-focused, very product-focused, and we have no products here. This is an event and an experience that we are doing. We're also a small team, although we've grown. Eric and I are the 2 co-founders and the 2 people most actively involved, but we do have some other people on staff, and we have a number of volunteers now. And we're never going to be huge, and we don't want to be huge, but we want to have a really top quality experience for our participants and for our staff and people who we work with. And thirdly, as you know, I'm an immigrant to Iceland myself, and most of the people that we're working with, through coincidence maybe, have ended up being immigrants, and that's maybe provided a different perspective on the experience for us. So the theme of today is founders and foundations. The foundations I would say that we built on, I don't want to say that we were trying to think of a need or problem to solve. Eric and I were drinking wine one evening and thought it would be a brilliant idea to start a writer's retreat. And we thought it would be fun, and we both like to organize events. But what we did do is try to brainstorm something that we both would want to attend and that we both wanted to be. I think companies can't be all things to all people. Events like writers' conferences can be all sorts of things where you have to pitch your work to an agent or apply to get in, or they're very big or they're very small. And you can't be all of those things, but what you can do is try to be as clear as possible about what you want to be, and then participants and customers can choose themselves what they would like to participate in. We also tried to set a very welcoming and friendly and informal tone early on and keep that through so that people, the experience is more than just the sum of its parts, which I hope we have. And then, of course, every year we get some feedback and we make changes, like we are next year introducing this new program. And now we have lots of little pictures here. This is a little collage of images from our event this year, our 6th event. Now we have friends and networks all over, which is terrific when you're traveling and you want to visit people. We've also brought a lot of, not to do the arrogance that I know can be so dangerous here, but we've tried to bring a lot of publicity to Iceland as a destination for literary tourism, which is, of course, a very sustainable form of tourism. And we've been mentioned in a lot of international media and had many international journalists visiting us. And I continue, of course, to take part and do talks on Iceland's literary heritage in general as part of that Taste of Iceland event that I mentioned at the beginning of my talk. We also try to be very active and do a lot of social responsibility and outreach. So every year we have at least one free event or free reading that is open to the public with all of this faculty who are attending. And we also have a number of locally based volunteers, often students, who then get to take part in the events and work with some of the visiting faculty. And we fundraise through the Carolina Fund every year to be able to offer scholarships to people in other countries to take part in the event. And we usually have around 700 to 750 applications for those full scholarships. And we've been able to bring over people from India and the US and South Africa and Nigeria and Kenya and lots of places, people who otherwise wouldn't have had an opportunity to take part in the Iceland Writers Retreat. And that's a very rewarding and interesting experience, and a way for our past participants to support us as well, because they help in the reviewing the application process. We also still, I guess a takeaway for me, we still have that healthy stress, I would say, that many of you are familiar with. It came as a bit of a shock to me, I think, our first year, at how I felt when, we thought we'd be fully, we had such a great idea that we'd be full within 3 weeks of opening our registration the very first year, and we had one person sign up. And then we had the second person sign up like 4 months later, and I thought, we can't have more teachers than participants. But we believed in what we were doing, and we really enjoyed it, and it worked out all right. I'm going to explain this picture in a minute. These are my takeaways from the talk today then. Oops. Right. Beware of imposter syndrome. I'm not specifically speaking to the women in the audience, but I know that this is something maybe that women sometimes are attributed more with. I see this too in the writers world. A lot of people in the writing community, and we get people writing to us with the Writers Retreat saying, I'm not actually a writer. Is it okay if I go to the Iceland Writers Retreat? Or I've never published a book, so I'm not really a writer. I hope it's okay if I go. And for me personally, I think this is something, when we started this event, I was very confident and I knew we would have a good event and I was happy to do it, but I was very hesitant to say that I was a founder or a startup an event. I thought, well, that's something more for the tech sector or for a different than what I do. But I think that, it's very, very important to be aware of these things and to be proud of what we're doing, and to just say what it is, that we are co-founders in startups, and it doesn't matter how big or how small you are or how successful or unsuccessful you are. If you believe it, then that is what you are. And if fate intervenes, then if the stars have aligned that maybe enable you to do something a little bit different, I would say to grab the moment and use your chance. You never know when it'll come through again, and it's always worth taking that risk. And luck, of course, has a lot to do with it. I was just reading a book last night that reminded me of another book that I'd read when Malcolm Gladwell interviewed Bill Gates and asked him why it was that he was so successful in founding Microsoft. And he'd said, of course, that he had unbelievable luck, that he was probably better educated in software engineering than anyone else of his generation at the time. And that was a result of a lot of luck. So we have to appreciate our luck and do the most with it. But I have to say, and those of you who are in the startup community must agree, that there really is no feeling quite like seeing something successful that you have built from the ground up, with a lot of help from a lot of people and a lot of support of people. It's one of the things that makes me feel good, and I'll give you a little bit of a tip of advice. If you're like me and you have your own home office, I get to do this a little bit. If somebody sends me an email sometimes like this, I had this great experience and I really enjoyed it, or I appreciate that, sometimes I print it out and I pin it up on a bulletin board behind my desk, because no one sees my desk except. And so if I'm having a bad day or something, then I can look at that, and it really does help, actually make you feel better. And that associates this with the photo. This is a photo of me in November 2006 in Ghana, West Africa, and this is those canopy bridges that you can walk over in the jungle, and there's about 6 of them. And I hate heights. Like, I'm really unusually nervous about being on heights, and it wobbles, and I was really nervous. And so I said to someone who was there, will you please take a picture of me? This is as relaxed as I looked on the whole thing. It was worse than that generally. But I did it, and I took that photo, and I, in bad text, printed it out, and I put "you can do it" on the back, and I also have that behind my desk, because for me this was one of the scariest things that I had done personally, and I tried to put a picture of it to remind me that if I can do that, then I can do anything else. And for all of you, there'll be something else that makes you nervous, and if you've done it, try to remind yourself of it. And then if you do something successful, try to pay it forward. There's so many people, and many of you are who helped Erica and I when we were getting started with the project and gave us wonderful advice, in some cases gave us money. We're also grateful for that. And we are tremendously grateful for the support that people have shown us through the years. And so I hope for those of you who see success that you will consider sharing your knowledge or experience or money or time with other people as they get started in the future as well. And lastly, a tiny bit of information that, sometimes we can always improve on things, and we're all working to constantly learn and constantly improve. For me, that would be learning to use PowerPoint a little bit better. I don't want to be one of these people who comes up and says, oh, sorry guys, the slides are not very good, and it doesn't really encourage anyone to pay attention to them. But I would like to acknowledge a specific area where I can definitely work to improve. So if any of you are PowerPoint experts, you can feel free to come and talk to me on the break. I don't know, this can maybe be improved somehow, we'll see. But I'm really excited to listen to at least some of you talk later today, and I think this is a great initiative. Thank you very much, and have a great day, everyone.